Hey, what's good, everyone? It's Kyle Henderson back with Angel Bone. It's Tuesday night. You know what we do on Tuesday? We talk recruiting. Next Wednesday, early National Signing Day. I'm just going to call it National Signing Day. I mean, there's so many guys that are going to be signing. We have something special coming your way next Wednesday, so definitely stay locked on. Like and subscribe to our channel because we got a ton coming your way. Bone, it's good to be back, man, talking recruiting.
Yeah, we're about a week out from signing day, and as you said, we could call it National Signing Day. It's certainly going to be a big event. I mean, there's a lot of kids making decisions. There's a lot of kids signing. So, I think February we call it the late signing period now. So, I definitely think that December has really taken over. The overall signing day experience. So it's going to be an interesting week. There's a lot going on, and I think that really anything can happen. I mean, a lot of people ask me, and they say, "Well, we're a week before signing day. How do you guys not know what a kid's going to do?" Well, there's a reason. A lot of these guys, waited this late because they don't know what they are going to do. They are still, letting different, schools recruit them, letting different, coaches talk to them. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of see what happens over the course of the next week.
All right, we'll definitely take your questions in a little while. I got some questions of my own that I got from Bone. Bone, let's check that internet connection. We're we're almost like on a freeze frame. From time to time, but we'll see if we can get that fixed for everybody. Like I said, everyone, next Wednesday is signing day. We got a ton of guys that are signing, and we'll keep you posted right now at BamaInsider.com. Bone, I wanted to ask you, and we were kind of talking about this before the show, kind of everything that's going on at LSU and how that is going to impact Alabama. I mean, we might have not thought it was that big of a deal kind of early on, but now that you see a player like Eric Gilbert kind of wanting to kind of some smoke that he might also want to transfer out, I think when you look at the remaining targets that Alabama has their eye on, Maason Smith, guys that they might have missed out on, Sage Ryan, still in play for Brian Thomas. How do you think that everything kind of going on at LSU could impact kind of these remaining targets and guys overall at LSU?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the biggest question, going into this final week. How big of an impact is, everything that's coming out about LSU going to affect certain recruits? Not only key targets that they're going after, but even guys who are committed to them that are, still heavily recruited by other programs. We saw some kids, kind of surprisingly, we saw some kids decommit from LSU in last recruiting cycle. Not really sure exactly, what happened towards the end, but we saw some of the out-of-state guys end up, leaving the class. Now, there's some big time targets that are in LSU's class right now that Alabama, along with a few other schools, are continuing to go after. So, it seems like the hits just keep on coming for LSU right now. And I know Coach Orgeron, that staff is trying to do probably everything it can to make sure that it doesn't lose some of its top remaining targets, including Maason Smith, the number one overall player in the Rivals 100. I mean, Maason Smith commits to another out-of-state school like Alabama or Georgia. I mean, that's that's huge. I mean, that's another big punch in the gut for LSU if they were to lose Maason Smith and potentially any of its commitments. 5-star safety Sage Ryan, who committed to LSU over Alabama last month. I mean, that's another guy that I think a lot of people are still kind of watching, waiting to see what may happen to him. As of right now, he's still pretty much solid with LSU, but he's still talking to other programs, including Alabama. Well, I say other programs. I think Alabama is probably the only program that he's probably still talking to right now. But could Alabama potentially flip him? Keanu Koht is a outside linebacker from Vero Beach, Florida. He's another guy that some schools are continuing to recruit, including Alabama. Alabama's been still showing interest. You have Nathaniel Wiggins, defensive back out of Georgia. Now, I don't really know a ton about him, but just looking at some different stuff online, it seems like he could be a potential flip target, not necessarily for Alabama, but maybe for another school. So I think really with a lot of these out-of-state kids who are currently committed to LSU, there's probably a lot of question marks. Not saying that they didn't make the right decision, but with everything that keeps coming out, we know the news that's coming out in the last 24 hours about Eric Gilbert. potentially leaving, and I don't know if that's become official or anything, but it certainly sounds like he's trying to get out of the program. Is he homesick, or is that just an excuse to get out of it, get out of there, because things aren't going well. I mean, we know all the stuff that came out, what was that, about a month ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, about the, sexual misconduct allegations and all the investigations that are going on, about that right now. Obviously terrible season coming off of a national championship. I mean, you expect to have a little bit of a drop off when you lose some major players, including the Heisman Trophy winner and Joe Burrow, but to get absolutely humiliated in games, including being a 30-point underdog at home to Alabama. They got a lot of things to fix down there, and there's a lot of talk about potential coaches getting fired down there. Not necessarily Orgeron, but you can probably expect some changes on the defensive staff. So we'll just wait and see. I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen. I think for the most part, you're probably going to see, even if some changes are made, those changes typically don't happen until after signing day, because you want to make sure that you get your guys on board and they don't bail and go somewhere else. So it's going to be interesting to really see what happens. With a guy like Eric Gilbert, people have asked me, is Alabama, a potential, option for him? I don't know. I mean, I think that, that's kind of a wait and see approach. I mean, the guy hasn't even entered the transfer portal. Alabama hasn't contacted him. Would Alabama be interested if he went into the portal? I don't think there's any doubt about that. So just have to kind of wait and see with him. But all eyes are on guys like Maason Smith and Sage Ryan. Some of these other big targets that that a lot of schools are going after, and LSU has probably been considered the favorite from day one. For Maason Smith, in-state kid, big time prospect. Now he's the number 1 overall player in the country. So, you don't want to lose the number 1 player in the country to a rival school, especially like Alabama. But Alabama's been recruiting him extremely heavily throughout the process. Has a great relationship with Freddie Roach, the defensive line coach. I mean, Freddie Roach pulls this off. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people really excited about this defensive line class, because you already have, Damon Payne. He's the number 2 defensive tackle in the country. Imagine if Alabama were able to get the number 1 and number 2 defensive tackles in the country to go along with the defensive ends that they've, landed the last couple of years. I mean, they would have an amazing, defensive front, moving forward. So, like I said, it's all kind of a wait and see approach, but there's a reason why a lot of these kids decide to wait, because they're not sure what they're going to do. It's people don't understand. It's real easy kind of for us during the summer to make a prediction, to say, all right, I feel like this kid's going to go here, this kid's going to go there. Our prediction percentages are probably a lot higher during the summer, during the spring, than they are around signing day, because a lot of these kids are just absolutely torn. They waited out, they let the game kind of play out, and they let these coaches recruit them all the way up until their announcement. I mean, I would imagine somebody like Maason Smith, somebody like Xavier Worthy, who's really torn between Alabama and Michigan. I guarantee you that he's going to be talking to these coaching staffs, all the way up until his announcement. In my book, The Road to Bama, I interviewed Trent Richardson, and Trent told me, Trent was, he was an Alabama commitment. He went into, he had a signing day press conference. He went into signing day thinking that he was going to sign with Alabama, that he was going to stick with his commitment and sign with Alabama. DJ Fluker, AJ McCarron, those are some guys who attended his press conference. So, yeah, absolutely. He's going to Alabama, no doubt about it. Well, Trent tells me, he says, I called Urban Meyer, a little bit before my announcement, just to he's like, I already had it in my head. I was going to Alabama. This is what I was going to do. I called Coach Meyer just to talk to him one more time. And he said, Coach Meyer would have answered the phone. There's no way I could have told him no. And I would have probably flipped my commitment from Alabama to Florida and gone to Florida. But Coach Meyer didn't answer the phone. And even if he would have tried to call me back, I wouldn't have picked it up. I was, once he didn't answer the phone, I stuck with my commitment to Alabama. So people don't understand. I mean, these are, these are 40-year decisions. These are, coaching staffs that are fighting tooth and nail every single, hour of the day to try to get these guys to commit to their program. And there's a lot of relationships out there. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are develop these relationships with these coaches throughout the entire process, and it's really hard for them to say no. So when people ask me, well, what's your prediction? Well, it's tough. I mean, I will make a prediction, but because I get it wrong doesn't mean we were just because we get it wrong doesn't mean a kid wasn't favoring that school maybe the day before, maybe an hour before. I mean, it happens. I mean, I interviewed a kid once right before his announcement. He gave me a commitment story, told me it was Alabama, got quotes and everything. And he said, and this is years ago, this is probably about 10, 12 years ago. And he gave me this commitment story the night before, got all the quotes and everything, wrote the story. And he said, I think it was his announcement was like at 11 or 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and he said you can release it right before I announced my commitment, so you'll have it first and it'll be out there, and the timing will be good and everything. I said, okay, whatever, let's do it. So I even went to his press conference. The only people there were Alabama reporters. There were no Auburn reporters. It's an in-state kid. Just Alabama reporters, because Auburn people knew that he was going to Alabama. Alabama people knew he was going to Alabama. So they all go to his announcement. Kid announces his commitment to Auburn. Everybody kind of looked at him like, all right, funny joke, but let's be serious. Tell the truth. And then he just walked off the stage. That was it. And I got a call, shortly after, because some people were following, the work that we were doing, and they said, he committed, he committed to Alabama. It was a done deal. He had committed to Alabama. And so Alabama wasn't sure what had happened. Of course, Auburn reporters were calling us, hey, can you get an interview with him? So stuff like that happens. I mean, it's a crazy world we live in. This recruiting business is wild. It's an up and down roller coaster ride. You just got to go along for the ride. And hey, it's worked out pretty well for Coach Saban and that staff for a very, very long time. I think it's going to work out well again. But there's going to be a lot of highs, a lot of lows over the course of the next over the next 7 days. That people are going to be all excited on Friday, because they're going to hear that this kid's leaning this way. Then on Sunday, that kid's going to be leaning somewhere else. Then on Tuesday, he's going to be leaning back. Then on Wednesday morning, he might be, it could go either way. I mean, it's just how it is. And I think that's what people love about recruiting. I think people enjoy the thrill. They enjoy the ride. It's going to be boring if we just said, yeah, he's going here, he's going there, he's going here. We know for 100% certainty that he's going to Alabama. We know for 100% certainty he's going to Georgia. People don't like that. Who cares? You want to enjoy that thrill, and that when a kid announces his commitment to Alabama. I mean, Alabama fans, when Rashaan Evans announced his commitment to Alabama over Auburn, 2 minutes after Auburn released a story on their official athletic website that Rashaan Evans had signed with Auburn, and then he commits to Alabama 2 minutes later. That was exciting. I mean, that was exciting for Alabama fans. It was a thrill. And even though, everybody thinks we build up the drama, these kids build up the drama. I would be great without dealing with some of this drama in the end. But I think with a lot of these kids, they like the thrill, but a lot of them also don't know what they want to do. They're praying, they're crying, they're talking to so many different people in their lives, whether it's parents, coaches, mentors, grandparents. There's so many different people that they're talking to. Let me tell you something. People who don't matter are probably other recruits. When other recruits are saying, "Oh, we want you here," or fans are tweeting at them saying, "We want you to come to Alabama. You'll make the biggest difference in the world." They love that stuff. They eat it up. But when they sit down and try to make their decision, they put all that stuff aside, and it really comes down to what they feel like is best for them and their families.
Here with Andrew Bone talking Alabama Crimson Tide football recruiting. Remember, next Wednesday is the early National Signing Day. I'm calling it Signing Day. We got a ton of stuff coming your way on BamaInsider.com. As you see right now, Alabama with 22 total commitments, number one in the Rivals.com recruiting rankings with 3 5-stars, 14 4-stars. And I mean, this class is absolutely loaded. Bone, kind of when we look at the top 5 teams right now, you got Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon, LSU, Georgia. We all know what's going on with LSU. We just talked about that. Is there a chance that Ohio State can make a run kind of at the last minute to surpass Alabama? Or do you feel confident that Alabama will retain that number 1 position as we go past early signing day, kind of into the new year?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it, the last, 24 hours, thinking about the other schools that are kind of in the race for that number 1 overall spot. And I just don't see Alabama getting overtaken. I think they're going to, finish as the top class in the country. They should finish as the top class in the country during the early signing period. We'll still probably see some targets, make decisions in February, but I don't know if it's going to matter that much. I mean, you look at Ohio State, and I always thought that, Ohio State would probably need to land, JT Tuamola and Emeka Ibuka, the number 1 receiver in the country, to potentially overtake Alabama. Well, Ibuka announced today that he's going to be making his decision on Friday, and it's certainly looking like he's probably going to announce for Oklahoma. The Sooners have a lot of momentum with him right now. I'm looking at LSU's class. What's going to happen there? Is it going to unfold? Are they potentially going to salvage it by landing Maason Smith and potentially keeping Sage Ryan and some of the other top targets on board? 2 programs that I'm watching pretty closely: Georgia and Oklahoma. I think Georgia's got a chance, especially if in terms of getting into that top 3. If they can land Maason Smith, I think Maason Smith is, starting to become a little bit more of a toss-up just because of everything going on at LSU. In Alabama, Georgia's certainly in the mix for him. Georgia's still in the mix for several other targets as well: Terry and Arnold, Xavier and Sorey. And those are some guys that are high on Georgia's list. Oklahoma is a school that I think, they're outside of the top 10 right now. They could potentially be in the top 5, maybe even in the top 3, by signing day. There's several 5-stars that I feel like they've got a good chance to potentially land. Camar Wheaton, we mentioned Emeka Ibuka earlier. I think they're in the driver's seat for 5-star offensive lineman Tristan Lee. So those are 3 5-stars right there that they could potentially land and, really make a strong move into that top 3.
Here with Bone talking Alabama Crimson Tide football recruiting. Bone, I wanted to talk about 2 wide receiver targets that, we've been kind of talking about for the last several months. You got Xavier Worthy, and then you also have Brian Thomas, 2 very priority targets. And I think when everybody kind of looks to the wide receivers that are next at Alabama, you have Ja'Cory Brooks, Ajay Hall, Christian Leary. Those guys are definitely going to come in. We're really excited to see those guys. But could Alabama could potentially add another to this very dynamic class, maybe Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas? What's kind of the latest on that?
I think with Xavier Worthy, there's still a lot of back and forth between Alabama and Michigan. I think that I still think he probably favors Alabama at this point. Even though he's still committed to Michigan, he's going to make that decision on Wednesday. And I think they're still kind of waiting. His family's kind of waiting to see what happens with Harbaugh. I don't think anything's kind of been determined there, about his future. I know there's a new offer on the table for him to stay at Michigan, but it's at a lower base salary. Does he potentially entertain some NFL offers? And I think if Harbaugh leaves, I think it's a done deal. And I'm not saying that it's not a done deal if he stays. I still think Alabama's got a great chance to flip him away from Michigan. But I think if Harbaugh does leave, they've got a great, an even better chance to land Xavier Worthy. And then with Brian Thomas, Brian's one of these guys who just doesn't talk a lot, keeps things extremely tight-lipped. He is saying that he's going to wait until February to decide, and he's not going to decide during the early signing period. But in the back of my head, I just keep thinking maybe he goes ahead and pulls the trigger, next week. I think Alabama's in the driver's seat for him. It's probably an Alabama-Texas A&M recruiting battle. LSU's I think they're just fading a little bit. I think they've been fading before all the stuff came out, but I think with everything that's been coming out here recently, I think they're fading even more. So I do think it's an Alabama Texas A&M battle for him, but I would say Alabama's in the lead, and we'll see if he potentially makes a decision next week. Last year, 5-star wide receiver Raheem Jarrett was committed to LSU. Said that he was going to wait and sign in February, make a decision in February, and then boom, on signing on that early signing day Wednesday morning, he flipped his commitment to Maryland, which shocked everybody. So we'll see if Brian Thomas potentially does something, but I still like Alabama's chances there, and I think Alabama would take both of those guys.
Here with Bone, talking Alabama Crimson Tide football recruiting. Be sure and hit the thumbs up button, like and subscribe. Again, next Wednesday, we got some great stuff coming your way right here on BamaInsider.com. Bone, when we kind of look at the running back situation, I know you've talked about him plenty of times. Camar Wheaton is a guy that Alabama fans or anybody would just love on their team. I mean, the guy's got an electric highlight tape. The number one player at that position. He's out of Texas. Alabama has done a fantastic job recruiting the state of Texas this year. What are you thinking about Camar Wheaton, and kind of what's the latest going into a pivotal week next week, and what is the timeline with him kind of making his announcement?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were surprised, when he dropped the news last week that he was going to announce on December the 23rd. Has the top two, Alabama and Oklahoma. I feel like this has been all Oklahoma for a very long time. I think with Alabama, numbers are tight, and I'm not saying he doesn't have a spot. I think Alabama would have a very hard time turning Camar Wheaton down if he wants to commit. But at the same time, I just see him going to Oklahoma. I don't think Alabama, really has, much of a chance there. So I would just kind of, in my opinion, forget about running backs in this class. I think Alabama's pretty happy with what they got, and I mentioned some other guys that Alabama's probably still keeping some tabs on, because you never know what may happen. Anything's possible in the recruiting game, especially if Alabama isn't quite sure what's going to happen with maybe some running backs that are on the team. What if Brian Robinson decides to turn pro? I don't know. I don't think he will. I think he'll come back. But what if he did decide to turn pro? I think Alabama would entertain the thought about trying to get another running back in this class. But as of right now, I just don't see them signing a running back. I think they're pretty happy with the guys that they signed in last year's class, and just full steam ahead in 2022.
Bone, one more running back. I know you said don't think about the running backs, but can you just kind of set the record straight about Amani Goodwin? Because I think that a lot of people, saw that, he decommitted from Auburn, and there's people asking about kind of, his status and whether or not he was going to be, maybe showing interest to Alabama. Can you kind of just put the final word out? And I know you said just kind of don't think about running backs, but people keep asking about Goodwin. So if you can kind of just clear things up.
Yeah, no, Auburn commitment, or former Auburn commitment, Armani Goodwin, decommitted last week, put out a top 5. Alabama was in it, so a lot of people just kind of assumed, oh man, he's an in-state kid. Alabama, probably all over him. They offered him earlier this year. It's kind of the same thing I said earlier. I just don't see Alabama signing a running back. I think Camar Wheaton, possible option, but I think he was probably the only one. I don't really see them making a strong push here. Now that may change after the early signing period. Once Alabama kind of regroups, gets into January, has a little bit better feeling of what their current roster situation is like, then they'll make that decision. But as of right now, I don't see them pressing hard. So I would probably expect him either back in Auburn's class or maybe end up somewhere out of state.
All right. Moving on with Andrew Bone right here at BamaInsider.com. Coming to you from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Remember, hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. We have 352 people watching. You should have 352 thumbs up. We appreciate it. Remember, all super chats go to Andrew Bone. And don't forget about his book, The Road to Bama. We'll definitely put the link in the description, and we'll also catch up with Bone before we end this particular show. Bone, as we kind of cruise through the recruiting show and talk about key remaining targets, Xavier Sorey is a guy that we've talked about plenty of times. Does it seem like Georgia is going to be the final destination?
Yeah, I mean, I like Georgia right now for Xavier and Sorey. I think that's probably a safe bet. Is Alabama and Florida in it? Absolutely. He's kept things pretty tight-lipped throughout the entire process. But if I had to make a prediction on Sorey, I would say Georgia.
All right, that was nice and quick on on Sorey, and two more guys that I wanted to get to, and then you can post your questions for Bone inside the comment box. These two guys out of the state of Texas, we've talked about them again and again. You kind of mentioned about Tunmise at the beginning of the show, but what's kind of the latest on Tunmise, and if there's been any movement going into signing day? As you know, it would be a slam dunk if Alabama was able to get Tunmise, and then also talk about Shemar Turner, a guy that is a very highly rated prospect as well. All right, that freeze frame of Bone, right? It looks like we lost Bone, and maybe we'll get him back on the show. Kyle Henderson, BamaInsider.com. We were just talking about Tunmise Adeleye, and let's see if we can get Bone back on the show. Give me 1 second. I think we're going to have him momentarily. The screenshot was hilarious. Bone. Let's see if we can get him. Bone.
Hey, I don't know what's going on tonight.
Okay, well, we'll get you all cleaned up for signing day next Wednesday. We were talking about Tunmise Adeleye and Shemar Turner. You could talk about those two key prospects out of the state of Texas. I think that'd be a great point to continue to, emphasize if they could just kind of slam dunk on the back end of this class.
Yeah, with Shemar Turner, I mean, I just think he's going to end up staying in Texas. I felt that way for a while. Looking like Texas A&M is probably in the driver's seat. Alabama, loves that kid, but I just think he's going to end up staying in Texas. Tunmise Adeleye, visited Alabama for the Iron Bowl. I definitely think that it's kind of a more of a toss-up with him, because I feel like there's been a new leader just about every single week in his recruitment. Expected to visit Florida this weekend, so you just don't know how he's going to be feeling after that Florida visit. It's always a little scary when when you're recruiting a particular player, he takes that last-minute trip somewhere. Then that school that felt like they were going to land him, they don't know anymore. They don't know, what's going to happen during that trip. So, Tunmise Adeleye, that's probably how Alabama's feeling right now with Tunmise. Will Florida potentially overtake, as the leader for him? So we'll see. It's an Alabama, Texas A&M, Florida recruiting battle. Prior to this weekend, it seemed more like Alabama, Texas A&M, but I think Florida can get right back in the thick of things, and it's going to be close. It's going to be really close with him on signing day, and it's going to be very interesting because he was a former commitment to Ohio State, not going to commit to the Buckeyes, so this is going to be a really down to the wire recruitment for him.
Here with Bone talking recruiting. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. And now we'll take your questions right here on BamaInsider.com. We'll be around, for a few more minutes to take some questions. This might be a shorter show than normally as we kind of gear up for the big kabang next Wednesday, that early signing day. All right, Bone, we got some questions in. And the first question we got from Gerald, and 22 verbals right now. And the Ohio tight end from last recruiting cycle. Does that mean that there are only 2 spots remaining in this class?
No, Alabama's going to bring in, with the tight end from last year. They're going to bring in 20. They got 23 guys right now, but I still think there's probably 4 spots remaining, and that it's probably stretching it out. But I think they would probably take 4 guys if they can get the right 4 guys. You got several guys that are going to be making decisions here in the next week. Xavier Worthy, Xavier Sorey, Tunmise Adeleye, Maason Smith. These are all guys who are going to be making decisions. If you can get 1, maybe 2 of those guys on board, then you're looking into the month of January when you still got guys like Terry and Arnold, JT Tuilamola. You also never know if Alabama could potentially flip somebody like a Sage Ryan or a Keanu Koht, somebody like that. So, I do think there's 4 spots remaining, and they're going to try to fill those 4 spots. But that's not to say if they don't get one of those guys, they're going to look elsewhere and try to find somebody else. I think all the guys, that they're continuing to recruit. I think that those are the guys that they're trying to land, not necessarily, all right, who's going to be the next guy up, who's a backup option or anything like that. It's just basically the guys that we continue to talk about. Those are the guys who have a spot if they want to commit.
All right, Bone, we're going to take a quick 5 minutes. We're going to give you 5 minutes. Let's try to get plugged back in, try to get the internet going because you're kind of choppy. We want to finish out the show strong. So take a quick 5 minutes, try to get plugged in, and then I'll bring you right back. All right, so we'll try to bring Bone right back here on Bama Insider. Kyle Henderson, thank you very much for watching. Be sure and hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. We were talking about this dynamic recruiting class from the class of 2021, and as Andrew was just talking about, there's still many guys that are in play, and I want to bring up real quick the class of 2021 overall, because I think that this class – what Nick Saban's been able to do has been really remarkable, right? When you look at kind of the year that Alabama has had, and keep this in mind, I'm about to bring up the entire class right now. Keep this in mind. Alabama hasn't been able to have any of these guys over for official visits, right? Nick Saban hasn't been able to go to South Carolina to visit Robbie Oots. He hasn't been able to visit Jalen Milroe in Texas. This has all been done virtually. And I think in a year like this, it's pretty incredible because Nick Saban has really had kind of that Bama factor that we talk about. And I think that's really helped build onto this recruiting class. I mean, look at in a year as topsy-turvy as it's been, Alabama has been able to retain their focus and stay number one in the college football playoff rankings. And they've been able to stay number one in the Rivals.com recruiting rankings. It's incredible. And I think it all kind of stems to the Bama factor, right? Alabama's been talking about the Bama factor for, a year or so now, 2 years. I love the slogan. And I think it really resonates with this year's class. Look at the guys that they've been added, right? Look at the guys that they added to this year's class. J.C. Latham, right? Out of Bradenton, IMG. You got Dallas Turner. Those guys are newly added 5-stars. I know there's some 5-stars from some other sites, and credit to those guys. I mean, they're certainly up there. The class is dynamic. You look at Deontay Lawson, a guy that Andrew Bone has talked, many times about. The guy had 27 tackles in one particular game. Still feel that he might be underrated as that 4-star. Adeleye Hall, have you guys seen him? And take a look at this. I want you to notate this, right? With these two receivers that Alabama are bringing in along with Christian Leary. But let's just focus on Adeleye Hall and Ja'Cory Brooks for a second. Notice something about each of those wide receivers, okay? Adeleye Hall, if you've seen him on social media, the guy, seriously, is the most physical wide receiver out of the class of 2021. We've seen him time and time again bury defenders by stock blocking them, right? And that's the kind of the type of guy that you want as a receiver. You want these guys to be physical. But the thing that stands out about these two wide receivers is the fact that they are bigger wide receivers than Alabama is accustomed to, right? Even Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, those guys aren't as big as the two that these guys are bringing in. Adeleye Hall, Ja'Cory Brooks. I love that, right? You kind of pair it up with Trayshawn Holden, right, who's a bigger wide receiver at Alabama, Jaleel Billingsley, who we've seen. So you kind of look at Alabama's wide receivers that could be bigger over the next couple seasons. And then you have Christian Leary, who's a wide receiver, a speed guy, probably one of the fastest wide receivers in the country. You tack on Xavier Worthy, who, just as Bone said, could be added to this class. Talk about a home run class in the wide receiver position. Andrew Bone has talked about Kane Williams before, out of Louisiana. And even though he is listed as a defensive back, his weight is probably closer to 230. So maybe look at him more as a linebacker when he gets to this class. Ian Jackson out of Prattville, Alabama. It's going to be that linebacker. He's playing in the All-Star game right now between Alabama and Mississippi. Hopefully we can have some coverage from that All-Star game posted right here on Bama Insider. Kadarius Callaway, Bones talked about him plenty, out of Mississippi, a guy that, is a new 4-star, a guy that, plays on both sides of the ball, a guy that is very dangerous. And then you look at Kendrick Blackshire. You guys seen Kendrick Blackshire before, right? On social media? Yeah, I know you guys have seen him. The guy is completely ripped. I don't know what he's going to bring to the table, but if he looks like anything like he can play, I mean, the guy could be an absolute monster. In Alabama, this is another thing that to keep note of, okay? On the screen right now, got Kendrick Blackshire, James Brockmeyer, Jalen Milroe. Alabama has done a fantastic job recruiting in the state of Texas. and having Tommy Brockemeyer along with that group, I mean, it's really just shows what I was talking about before, that Bama factor sells. And to be able to take the Brockemeyer brothers out of the state of Texas, fantastic. We got the main man, Andrew Bone, back. Bone, how are you feeling, man? Good?
I'm good. Where I was on my Wi-Fi, and which typically works. I mean, everybody who watches the show know it. That's what I'm usually on, but it was a little choppy tonight. But we plugged directly in now, so hopefully it's not going to be an issue.
Okay, yeah, you're still kind of a little choppy. Make sure to turn that Wi-Fi off. We might have to do a couple troubleshooting tips. We're taking some questions from some of our fans right here on the show. Let's see if we can get the internet going. If not, we're going to come back Wednesday and we're going to have everything all buttoned up for you guys right here on Bama Insider. But we definitely wanted to end the show with a couple questions. So if we can have them, then we'll go with it. If not, go to BamaInsider.com. You can post your questions there because Andrew will be doing a Q&A on BamaInsider.com on Wednesday. So, Bone, let me still see if we can kind of move on from the show. If not, we'll come back. It won't be a big deal. Okay.
Is it choppy? Can you hear me?
It's a little choppy, to be honest, unfortunately. Let's see. Let's give it 5 more minutes, see if we can move past it. If not, we'll come back another time. Okay. Let's see. Okay, John is asking, what's up, John? Thank you very much for joining the show. Do you think Bama can get Tanner Bailey out of the class of 2022?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very possible. It'll be interesting kind of see what happens kind of moving forward because, Alabama, signed the number 1 quarterback in the country last year in Bryce Young. They got an elite quarterback in this class, Jalen Milroe. 2022, as I've mentioned, many times, it's, kind of difficult because there was no evaluations, during the spring and during the summer. The only really evaluations that we've seen are, highlight films. So a lot of schools are hoping that things kind of reopen in the spring. They're able to go out, evaluate guys, bring guys into camp. I mean, that's going to be, a big deal once camps can get going again to evaluate these kids. Because nothing like that happened this year. There was no evaluations. I mean, you're basically just, taking kids based off of film and, maybe some highlights or some training videos that they've seen. But a lot of these guys haven't been seen in person in a very long time. So especially with this 2022 class, not a lot of evaluations. A lot of kids are ranked high. A lot of kids are, committing to different schools, but how good are these people, or these players? You really need to get a chance to evaluate these guys in person, not just seeing them on film. And, that's what was really taken away from college coaches, from recruiting, reporters and everybody throughout the spring, throughout the summer. People like me, recruiting analysts from rivals, they can go out on Friday nights. They can go to games and see players. College coaches can't, and that's a big thing that they do every single fall is go out and evaluate kids, not necessarily seniors. They mostly go out, to watch juniors and underclassmen so that they know who they want to target for next year's class. Bring those guys in for junior day and go from there. But none of that happened this year, but Tanner Bailey is certainly a kid that Alabama likes a lot. They're in contact with him pretty regularly out of Gordo High School, and definitely somebody that I could see in Alabama's recruiting class. But same time, I think that it's probably only going to be one quarterback. There's some other guys that are out there that Alabama really likes, including Ty Simpson out of Tennessee, who visited Alabama earlier this football season. That's definitely a guy that they have very high interest in early on. So those are probably two guys that that are pretty high on their list early on in the recruiting process.
All right, we got a question coming, and this is from Peter. And by the way, our fans are saying that you sound great. So, who knows? It's the internet could be my system. So let's just keep rolling with it. Peter is asking. He's like, wasn't Maason Smith an Alabama fan growing up? I think you mentioned that maybe before. I mean, could you imagine growing up an Alabama fan, being in Louisiana? I mean, the guy must be so tormented, kind of going through all this. So was he a fan of Alabama growing up, and could that play into this? I'm sure Alabama fans are like, come on, like we would love you on our squad.
I mean, yeah, he's mentioned that before. He grew up an Alabama fan, in LSU country, but he also grew up, watching Alabama, beat LSU most of the time. I mean, very rare did LSU get a win against Alabama while he's been growing up, and throughout high school, throughout junior high school. I mean, he's watched Alabama completely dominate that series. LSU got that win last year against them, went on to win a national championship. They won at Alabama in 2011, but ever since that went, they had 2011 all the way to 2019 before they had a win, and that was Maason Smith's years in junior high school and high school. So that's all he's seen is Alabama dominate that series, and he was at the game on Saturday night, and he saw what Alabama did to LSU. I don't know if that's going to play a major role in his decision. I mean, I know that, he's probably surrounded by a bunch of, LSU fans in the community, probably even in his own household. But at the end of the day, he's going to make his own decision. I don't think anything's really tying him down to LSU. Like we saw with Sage Ryan. I mean, Sage Ryan, there was a lot of talk that he was going to Alabama, that was going to be the school for him. But then after he announced that he was going to commit, that weekend, he decided that it was going to be LSU. And I think a lot of that, had to do with, his family, big LSU family. And I think that's how Alabama ended up losing him. But as Eddie Mixon has asked, can Alabama steal the number one safety from LSU? I think they can. I'm not banking on it. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but I think he is continuing to speak to Alabama. Contact and communication still there, which is good. I mean, that's what you want. You at least want to have a chance. You may not get them, but the fact that he hasn't necessarily closed the door and said, hey, I'm not talking to you guys anymore. I'm 100% solid with my commitment. I think that kind of opens up the door for Alabama to potentially land him, especially with everything going on down at LSU right now. I mean, there's just so much going on that you don't know what's going on in these kids' heads or what they're sitting down at the dinner table talking to their families about, as they get ready to make this life-changing decision, for the rest of their lives. So it's going to be an interesting week, but I do think Alabama's in the hunt. Like I said, I'm not going to say he's going to flip, but I do think Alabama's in the hunt for him.
All right, this is an interesting question, and this is coming from Daniel. What's up, Daniel? Thank you very much for watching the show. Let's say that if Eric Gilbert somehow, this is all hypothetical, right? But let's say that he wanted to transfer out from LSU, and then he chose Alabama. How would that count in terms of the numbers to the class of 2021, or how would that be added, Bone?
Yeah, it's not going to count towards the 2021 class. It'd count, if he enters the transfer portal, he ends up deciding that he's going to go to Alabama or wherever he decides to go. He's just going to count against that 85 overall number, which seems like it's going to be pretty skewed this year, as the NCAA said that everybody pretty much has a pass that they can come back next year and play if they want. So I don't know how the numbers are going to work out. I was asked this earlier today on a radio show. How the scholarship numbers on each team are going to work out. I mean, it's probably going to be an unfair advantage to some of these bigger programs as compared to some of these smaller programs who do not have the athletic budget to have 115 people on scholarship, whereas Alabama could easily, they would clearly welcome that and have they try to get as many players as possible if they could, but some of these other programs aren't going to be able to do that. So I don't know how the numbers are going to end up working out overall, but in terms of somebody who's going to transfer, that's going to be counted towards the overall numbers, not necessarily the class numbers.
All right, John with a question. We're here with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. We'll be here for a few minutes. So if you have a question, I'll try to run through some, that I can. Definitely hit the thumbs up. And towards the end, we'll talk about Andrew's book. So we'll put the link in the description where to buy that. What's the latest on Jeremiah Alexander, a guy that we've talked about, kind of faded away, but kind of quickly on Alexander, please.
Yeah, I mean, former Alabama commitment in that 2022 class. Alabama's still in it. I think he kind of just was taking a step back from the recruiting process, wants to visit some schools if he can in the spring and enjoy the recruitment a little bit. Alabama, Georgia, both pretty high on his list. I think those are probably going to be the two schools in the end. there's some other programs that are out there, but I don't see him going anywhere other than Alabama or Georgia at this time. And but like I said, I think he just won a state championship last week. He's enjoying that, going to live in that moment. And I think just be patient. Let's see how it all unfolds. Even if he makes, it's going to be interesting with him because he's an in-state kid. He grew up an Alabama fan. So even if I see him, potentially committing to Georgia during the spring or potentially committing somewhere else, I still think Alabama's going to be in it until the end, especially if they, they really press hard for him.
All right, we got a few more as we kind of cruise through the show. Thank you very much for watching, and we appreciate all the feedback. Means a lot to us right here on Bama Insider. Definitely hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. This is a tough one, Bone. Who's the best overall player in this class?
Yeah, that is a tough one.
I didn't want to ask you, but I mean, Gelato's always here, so I had to ask you.
I love the offensive line class, but I think there's some offensive linemen in this class that have a chance to be, NFL first-round draft picks. And I'm going to have to go with Dallas Turner. I think he's a superstar. I think he's a guy that could potentially come in and, we know that Alabama has some great true freshmen, and I kind of see him making an early impact. He's not going to be on campus early, doesn't look like. So, that puts him behind a little bit. You're going to see some, you're going to see some of the offensive linemen in this class that are going to be, I think all 4 offensive linemen that are committed are going to be there early. So that's going to give them a little bit of a jump start. But Dallas Turner is a special player. I think. He just got his ranking updated on Rivals to a 5-star. I think he can challenge to be a top 15, top 10, top 5 player overall. How do I compare Dallas Turner to Will Anderson? A little different. Will's probably a little bit thicker. I think with Dallas, he's a lot quicker, a lot leaner. But he's taller. He's 6'5", 200 and about 250 pounds. I think one thing that really stands out to me about Turner is obviously his quickness, the use of his hands. He this year he's had an opportunity to be coached by former NFL star Jason Taylor, who many people say that he's very similar to, compares his game to. So working with him. Somebody who's played for Coach Xavier and Jason Taylor too. So I think that that's been very beneficial and very helpful for him, and I think he's one of the best overall players in the country.
All right, you can give an update on Alabama's quarterback commitment, Jalen Milroe, just kind of how his season. I don't know if he's still playing or if it ended, but you had great things to say about him. Said that he was having a fantastic season over in Texas. Another Texas commit, as we talked about. What kind of season did he end up with, Bone?
Well, a really good season. I mean, this is a guy who helped his team to an undefeated regular season, district championship, first time. And I think it was 11 years that they won the district championship. He's getting ready for the playoffs this week. They had a bye last week, so he's getting ready to play this week. Having a great year. Hasn't had to play a lot in the second half just because his team's been up so much, but having a fantastic year. And he's, I talked to him yesterday. Excited about signing with Alabama. Going to sign next week, and is also going to be an early enrollee.
All right, we got one from good buddy Sean in Huntsville. To me, it seems like he's going to Florida. I remember Bone saying the last visit is what you want. Is Bama still in good shape with Tunmise Adeleye? We've talked about him before, but I think Sean is just joining.
Yeah, I mean, last visit is what you want, but at the same time, you don't. This is a little bit different. COVID, kind of changed things up a little bit in terms of not really being able to sit down with the coaching staff and spend a lot of time with them while you're on campus. That's not happening. So, I don't know what's going to happen with Tunmise. I think Alabama's got a chance, but I also think Texas A&M and I think Florida's got a chance. But heading into this visit, I think Alabama A&M a little bit ahead of Florida, but Florida, can make up some ground this weekend. It's going to be very, very interesting to kind of see what he ends up doing, because he's been, probably one of the most unpredictable, recruits overall in the country this recruiting cycle. Just, very tough to predict. I think people were a little bit surprised when he made that commitment to Ohio State back, in the spring. Not to say that Ohio State wasn't the favorite, but I think a lot of people thought that he was going to wait it out, and maybe he just, when COVID hit, he decided, hey, I'm going to go ahead and make a decision. So that's what he did, but obviously decommitted, and has left things kind of up in the air between these last three these final three schools that are high on his list.
Daniel wants to know, Tyreek Sapp, if Alabama misses on Tunmise and Shemar Turner.
Yeah, I mean, I know Alabama's been in contact with him, but at the same time, I just don't see him flipping from Florida. Florida having a great year, winning the SEC East, going to the SEC championship, having a great recruiting class. I don't see him flipping. I think he's pretty solid with the Gators.
All right, Bone, before we go, just want to let everybody know that we really appreciate you guys being here. Hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Hey, Bone, you got to tell everybody about your book, The Road to Bama, Incredible Twists and Improbable Turns Along the Alabama Crimson Tide Recruiting Trail, available on Amazon. All I did to get to it, look, I'll put the link in the description box, but I just typed in Andrew Bone's book, and it popped right up. Then I went to Amazon, so that's a quick way to get it. Bone, give us some detail on your book, The Road to Bama.
Yeah, I feel like, usually around Christmas time, and around the holidays, you're looking for gifts, looking for, that Alabama football book that you want to give, your loved one who's a big Alabama fan. I think that The Road to Bama certainly fills that void. 18 chapters. Each chapter tells the story of a former Alabama great, his life, his recruitment, why he ended up choosing the University of Alabama. There's a lot of different interviews in each chapter, with either the player, a high school coach, a recruiting coach from Alabama who, was in charge of his recruitment, or, potentially, an interview with a Auburn coach who recruited him. I talked to Mark Richt, former Georgia and Miami coach, about his recruitment of Brody Crowell, which was extremely interesting and fun to learn about, how he saw things. So it's not a book where you have to sit down and read chapters 1 through 18. You can read chapter 18, which is on Tua, or you can jump to chapter 2 and read the whole story on David Palmer's recruitment. Or you can jump and read, Brody's recruitment, or read whoever, Marty Lyons, Dwight Stevenson, John Hanna, Leroy Jordan, just so many Alabama greats that I certainly had the honor of interviewing each one of them and talking to their families. And I think a lot of Alabama fans will really enjoy this book during the holiday season.
All right, good stuff. And we'll put the link in the description box. But if you want to get it, all I did was type in Andrew Bone's book, popped up right on Amazon. So definitely check it out. Hey, Bone, I want to add one more. Mike's been with us the entire show. Thank you very much, Mike. We appreciate you sticking with us. He thinks J.C. Latham is going to be the impact player. I mean, I didn't come up with this, but someone said it. One of our followers said, this is the great wall of Bama that's incoming with all these guys that are added to this class. Your thoughts on JC real quick, because, I mean, this guy is number 2 overall in Rivals. This guy, from the IMG, it's like a farm, club to Alabama. Talk about JC Latham.
Yeah, I mean, with JC, this is a guy who has only, played offensive line for 2 seasons. He's really developed into an elite player. There was some argument that he could potentially be the number 1 overall player in the Rivals 100, and may end up being the top player. I mean, he plays at IMG Academy, was coached extremely well. Head coach, offensive line coach, great strength and conditioning program. He had it all down there. I mean, they're like the Alabama of the high school football world. So I mean, he definitely comes from a great program that played against elite competition week in and week out, and he dominated. So seeing him as the top offensive lineman in the country, no surprise. And it's a big need. I mean, Alabama is going to lose some key pieces to that offensive line after this year. And, there's some guys coming in that can really make a big impact as true freshmen. I mean, I don't know if you want to count on, 2 or 3 true freshmen on the offensive line, but you got a class right now that's coming in that is a special group but I think that you could potentially see multiple first round draft picks in the next few years.
All right, good stuff, Bone. Well, thank you very much to everybody who checked out the show tonight. Defense, like I never catch this live, but it's been great. Keep up the good work. Chat was very informative as well. Hey, look, you guys can definitely catch the rewatch. You can listen to it via podcast. And of course, you don't have to wait till every single Tuesday to get all your information. Just go to BamaInsider.com. Bone's on there every single day at all hours, posting at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., still trying to figure out when he sleeps. And then, of course, next Wednesday, early signing day, we'll get you completely caught up to speed all day long right on BamaInsider.com. So when you think about Alabama's tremendous recruiting class from the class of 2021, think Bama Insider will, of course, get you covered. Follow Bone on Twitter. Follow myself as well. Of course, all the coverage back at BamaInsider.com. From beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama, thank you for watching, and we'll catch you soon back at BamaInsider.com. Good night, everyone.